working for you. This is the 23 News Update at 10.
While many might expect farmers to hibernate through the winter months, that couldn't be farther from the truth as the Illinois Farm Bureau elects its newest leaders. Brian Duncan of Ogle County will serve as IFB president and Evan Holteen as vice president. 23 News reporter Jake Pearson talks to the pair about what 2024 will bring for the second-place farming state in the country.
There's a long list of challenges Illinois farmers face, including biofuels and labor shortages, but Duncan and Holteen are confident in their plan, saying there's a reason why they were chosen to lead.
You don't end up in these chairs by accident. He and I have a deep passion and belief in this organization and our ability to do important things on behalf of our members and on behalf of agriculture.
Stepping into the new year in new shoes, leading the best interest of farmers across the Prairie State.
Given the opportunity from the delegates to lead them and lead this organization is absolutely a blessing and something I know we're both really excited about and looking forward to.
The Illinois Farm Bureau elects Brian Duncan and Evan Holteen to lead as the next president and vice president. They plan to get to work right away.
So determining those needs and then how we execute on meeting them is something that is always our job.
One of the biggest challenges facing farmers in 2024, restricted exports to other states.
We still are trying to work through a solution to California's recently enacted, as of Jan 1, Proposition 12, and how they are banning USDA-approved products from being sold in their state.
Proposition 12 offers protection to egg-laying hens, mother pigs, and calves, and prohibits the in-state sale of caged animal products raised out of state.
It's a consumer issue. We're seeing pork now being higher priced in California and having a dramatic impact on people on fixed incomes, military people. We really need to try to execute on a remedy for, but a lot of these things are easier said than done, there's no doubt.
Nationally, California's Proposition 12 law is called the Ending Agriculture Trade Suppression Act, or EATS. Senator Tammy Duckworth and 9 Illinois House reps have opposed the act.
Thank you, Jake. The IFB board also elected 4 new directors representing different districts across the state. In total, the IFB has about 79,000 members who are farmers, representing 3 out of 4 farmers in the state.